Okay, so that's the very right now. It's like we still managing to get out of like that and go down like place and from that sort of particles or that is around friend. Right now, I'm slowly putting that exactly as to that film to you right now. Morning in from that phone look that I'm putting that in more closer to that which will be most likely believe morning in that in the top like police is definitely might be the case definitely not else like only on the top that I'm just putting this like morning my mother and like telling her that like to cancel that like please like canceling the plan. So that's sort of the scenario developer. So that regard like I'm going to find that it would person in the scenario to be that with this intent. It can be those but either one of these two possibilities would be like the intent which is like that they would be right now to be trying to like so that use the phone, but like I'm looking right as like the phone will be riding and like the person on like the opposite end which is enough like the call like I'm looking at that point just because like the change happening in Zulu because like I'm looking even though Billy had escape from that sort of particle of like the shadow monster from its captivity still I'm looking that still in that whole clash between that Billy and like the particle of the shadow monster like still a certain extent of like that particle of the shadow monster might have still managed to like get into Billy's body might have been that's the case that really doesn't so like already like even as like really like took its car and got away from like the bottom like and that time that cutting might have been slowly starting to like expand more and more throughout like Billy's body that like I'm thinking right now so like scenario to be like right as like the phone would be riding where like I'm feeling more sort of positive that it would be like the colleagues and like really would be proud of so like I'm thinking that Billy with that in an absolutely frantic and tense manner like quickly right now with like Billy phoning and the cop might be the case. So like the moment like the cop would be like picking up like and I'm wondering like it may be giving like a shot of had to be picking up at that point like the phone call or like one of its like subordinates that because you're picking up the phone call. So like at that point like at that point right you know to be like in the tense manner would be about to like explain like the strange happenings in that go around that right actually will be about to explain it that it's only that takeoff is happening through like the spreading of the stuff that the shadow of the truth believe. And at that point it gives you that the shadow of that will be speaking on the uh, to that the police on like the other end of the phone and like telling them that they it's not or something along the lines and that like a totally different belief, which like a different totally different kind of some facial expression and like belief in telling to that the cops at the other end that like it's nothing and basically hanging up the phone straight away. Like the scenario that I'm looking over and that is okay, so let's definitely not the wrong question right now, but like the moment release calls was completely 911 like at that point it felt like the light at like the phone wave like going off like I'm exactly feel like that instant moment that the light went off like at that very instant moment like it's pretty might have reached like the of like shadow of the first particle within that really might have reached like the point of that really reaching that exact situation as that of that from like the popular like instantly from that went on like what really from the moment that like the light of like the phone went off like from that moment, what really would we see from that moment that the battle was and from the career was that telling like how Jin was able to see that the battle was on the career was during that the starting of like the Saruman from the start of the will might be what happens right now. Definitely, definitely. So definitely, Victoria Justin right now established me that the shadow monsters can't definitely, in fact, the even with like the shadow monster trying to like take off control of like really lack of still that the shadow monsters that actual target definitely won't be really and it might totally definitely be 11 and 11 alone. It's definitely my Victoria. So definitely that really would be like the shadow monsters like plan to like totally get towards like 11 get really towards like somehow towards like 11 so that they eventually take control of 11 might be what like the shadow master might be plan of the movement between them. So like definitely over like the past year like that great number of like spreading a great number of like portals might have like multiple portals might have underground portals might have created that have looked by the shadow master beneath that town pockets and like that spreading of like the backward might have been stealthily happening for the course of like the past year. So like the parallel most likely is during like the past year during the shadow of during like the past year was at some point having taken control of Galley. Definitely my business into like the scientists most likely finding out about Galley and like Galley superpower and like that scientist since he had that deadline of 1 year before like he had to like open up the gate and that last but like on the different like method only about the Galley and use Galley to like open up that gate and while like the focus there along with that Galley might have been exploring like the battle at that point might have been when Cali might have got affected by the shadow monster. Might have been what might happen. So that way, through the control of Cali, I'm going might be how the shadow monster might have been for the remaining of the past year, might have created multiple industrial demand of might have created multiple underground forests. Might have been what might have happened in the past, certainly not the rainbow. Yet even with taking control of Candy, everything, the shadow number still might not be done with with taking control. The shadow monster might still want control of 11 as well. Might be the intent, currently intent of the shadow. So even with account in the political thing, so like spreading of it, then around the put out already from the to a certain extent within the town of Hopkins or the boss of it, we are still anticipating still regardless of and anticipating definitely multiple hubs as well might be created, might have been by now created in less than around area, the town of yet I'm saying the reach and the range of the control of the capacitor of the shadow but still this entire time of the past year might have still not been able to get towards make it towards might have been the base just leave so right now taking the role of the maybe unbelievable might be the shadow of the plan to somehow get by controlling the DP somehow get to me to manipulate to me and then by now the shadow monster will probably knowing all the front of that element might and all of them. So this plan I mean the current plan would be to totally by taking control of the nature totally usefully to cross number to the front of element and that way to or maybe affect the front of one of the front of element so that that way to your element to that exact specific location where where the shadow monster the part of the shadow monster might be in range and might be able to take control of element might be what the shadow monster might be something is one possibility that I'm looking at. The other possibility that I'm looking for especially with the shadow monster lure in rats and they trying to take control of rats I'm thinking still I'm thinking even with it being revealed that while taking control I think all the state number of rats having problem and still in the stronger ones the rats might have still survived, might have been what so rats as well as probably what maybe the shadow monster might be trying to do might be to increase the pace of the expanding of that underground tunnel needs side of it spread over pockets maybe to increase the pace in which that tunnel spread to help out with digging process for the ones to expand and then it's maybe the possibility for five the shadow monster right now in the percent of after all those of rats as well as after Billy as well to take on all of that so definitely the range and definitely I'm still also sticking to my brain to that all this great number of rats being lured to go down area might have been solely through that particular the shadow monster most likely emitting some sort of frequency, which would be totally, which might be totally audible to humans, but would be totally audible to a rat. And using that frequency might be how that particular shadow monster might have lured all those directly of a rat towards the go down area back there. It's definitely also a person very unfortunate that pretty much. So that's the play very ambition right now with Leader right now seeing appears to be a clone really definitely starting right now that is totally not only a clone but that is totally the parallel version of Leader from the parallel world. It's how the buildings in the parallel world, even though in an unclean state are the exact same buildings in the real world and definitely the parallel version of the humans in the real world might have must be existed in the parallel world as well. It's definitely my consideration. So at least great number of people along with the band version of Billy that has right now approached Billy among them I'm feeling there will definitely be the actual real world right now. So definitely my preparation and he will be the one that would have brought all of them to the real world right now. So definitely my preparation. So I'm totally putting a bad version of kind of during the whole bad during the whole monster the face monsters and the shadow monster monster they might eventually sort of and start creating problems in the parallel world and started taking over the parallel world. And that as well might have definitely been due to the experiment of the parallel versions coming up involving the parallel version of 11. It's definitely my primary impression that I'm still sticking on to. It's definitely my primary. So and I'm definitely putting it might have been the parallel version of 11 that might have eventually gotten transformed into humanoid faces motion, which might have been like that exact humanoid faces motion that had tried to like, communicate with like 11 back when that the real world had basically post that experiment on 11 with like the accessing of like the last word. At that point, like that faceless monster that they try to communicate with like 11 in like the last word and without like really let 11 even I think was saying that like 11 was like a monster like that would all be due to like 11 like telepathic powers like of reading powers that faceless monster which that showed up and tried to communicate with 11 back in like the past with exactly like 11. That's definitely my submarine. So and definitely my birthday ambition right now is definitely for like a bunch of surprise would be totally lying await for like especially for because like I'm considering definitely among those that a great number of people that have right now showed up in front of Billy like I'm looking to just be like the parallel version of Billy alone that would be something like I'm definitely something that the parallel version of that might live the fantastic being there but like I'm thinking that the parallel version of Will might have not survived definitely my information. And definitely huge big surprise one considering will be lying away for like specifically Nancy as well as like specifically for like corporate friends. So definitely my preparation because like I'm thinking those great number of people that have right now stored up in front of Billy. I'm definitely thinking that there will be like the parallel version of Sarah. The parallel version of Sarah might have only survive in like the parallel version. This like whole faces most of take off in like the parallel version. But like I'm looking like the parallel version of that pop-up might have totally sacrifices life to like protect the parallel version of that. And that way like the parallel version of Zara might have survived and might have eventually ended up finding her way towards like the secret base of Black Runoff, which definitely I'm still thinking of my patient interesting. Although great number of lampposts with like they don't have the lights and light in like the barrel world. Like which that will have basically seen from like the real world that during that the Halloween night that at that whole location in like the barrel world with like this great number of lampposts containing lights being like the only source of light in like the barrel world. That might have those great number of lampposts might be set up by run up the real world run up to live in survivors of like the parallel world towards that the new phase of that in that the parallel world that is my consider because like run up there might be totally thoroughly the all sorts of like experiments and like the experiments might have that will experiments right now will be most likely to create like and huge army of like humans whether regardless of whether they are from like the parallel world or from like the real world to create like huge army of like humans and to have each and every single one of them gain like the superpower of like element and using all of them to like destroy like the shadow bots and like this would be of such extreme great urgency for like Brunner, especially right now. Because like I'm thinking even after like in like a year back I think like right 11 had closed the game from like the end of the level. Brunner might have uh found out about all that year like I'm thinking about the course of like the past year like the entire moment of like the shadow bot like computer that run up might have also seen that as well. It's certainly another benefit. And like by now, I'm still thinking of another benefit that like by taking down most likely through like the shadow taking control of that Cali, the shadow might have used Cali's like telekinesis powers to like create like in a stealthy manner to create like multiple portals. Uh, underground portals might have been what might have happened surrounding the ground portals might be what might have happened outside for the purpose of last year and Pranab might have seen this and perhaps that way Pranab might have seen that as the threat like the shadow monster poses to like the real world and this that way like Pranab might have right now feel that as felt that as the urgency and might have decided to like definitely ensure to like go up to like the real world and get more recruits for like Pranab's experiment to have them all that way gain like the superpower and to can't really create such an entire huge army of the humans with like the same superpowers as that of F11 and for them to like launch that kind of big attack against like the Shadow Monster, which can bring down like the Shadow Monster. Right now, that's kind of like ultimate or vulnerability as like the ultimate or threat will be like that Shadow Monster that to eliminate that Shadow Monster will be the highest priority for now. Uh, it's definitely my good damage. So definitely get that might of the reimbursements for like that. Then different situation will be like these within like the parallel world that I'm saying there will be multiple giant shadow monsters out there deep in like the parallel world. I've also seen that under the made for another might go down on that. I think so also that is another thing. So like under the right now in it person like for an ultimate goal would be that for another only thing is single shadow monster will have like the ultimate threat and current goal would be like eliminate those shadow monsters. Exactly, that means shadow monsters that we have to break. In hope that like for we don't think that that will so might not be so that we can know that save and that the real world as well from getting started and all that by that shadow and all that they learn the lines like another thing. That way like we can prevent like the real world as well from it as well getting turned into like attacks and the kind of situation of the bad world. It's definitely necessary. And the case of that bad world like bad world being always dark and having no sun at all. No daytime at all. Like because like only having like the parallel world only having nighttime will be only thing that the parallel world at one point in that distance was like exactly like the real world. But like it might have been so only like the tear that might have happened in the base that might have opened in like the parallel world in terms of like the parallel world kind of like experimental like this there like the parallel worlds might have faded or eliminated with like the base which might be like something out of that might have been more like Canada and that has like the gate might have kept on expanding it like up you know on the like stops that to close the gate might have been what might have happened and that this might have correctly resulted in like that gate expanding all the way to like the point of like probably like the entire of like sky and that way like that dimension of like the face most and like shadow might have fallen out of that parallel world and that way of like the might that way might have been how like the parallel world might have turned completely dark uh, kind of like a situation where like that was like a sleeping son and no like people like the following up that was like the variable house by like the time like with not around the shadow might have been what might happen to certain like the mentioned of the home. So like that need might have been the person that is sitting on those people or like which so that will be for enough that might have been like the one who might have brought like not only the fan version of but all those great number of people along with like the fan version of among whom like definitely something that there would be that definitely stepping into my consideration that like among those people definitely there are that might do again fantastic but no with like the fan version they might have only got definitely my consideration and like there will be like the fan version of Sarah and I'm thinking like there will be also Barbara, the real world Barbara, who was like way back into like the bad world, and she might have totally managed to like survive. So that Barbara that like basically Eleven that in like, the past when Eleven had searched using like access to like the pathway that Barbara that she had found eliminated like that might have been like the parallel version of Barbara. It's definitely my danger person that was thinking also. So like that real world Barbara we got a better way back that might have managed to like still survive and might have ended up finding or like running into like those great numbers. Eventually might have ended up running into that great number of like lampposts within like the battle world, leading to like the new phase of like run up. And that way, like even Sarah as well as like the bad version of Sarah as well as like the real world Barbara as well might have ended up being part of like run up might have been what might have happened. So like this would be like something like that actually feels not right. That might be totally like away for like Hopper and Silas Nash. So definitely like doing good scenarios that I'm going to right now. And also the thing to understand right now is that like the real world Sarah, the daughter of Hopper, was that has already been revealed to real and extremely brilliant like and the that means that the case in the case of like the bad version Sarah as well and like might have been that was say case later in the so like the bad version of Sarah who Brenner's experiment by now might have already gained like elements like superpowers of like telekinesis already by now, especially by the friend. But like the second power like Amazon would be strongly different. Like unlike it's like how like the case of Candy has like the power of like other than the power of like superpower of telekinesis like the fact that Candy has like the power of like creating visual hallucinations like uh and by the way, in the case of Sarah, well, and the parallel version of Sarah, well, and by now, runner might have, through the second student might have managed to like make some gain, like something different power, innately by the game, like unique power, and like by also like the telekinesis powers as well, to be for like Sarah might be like that you might be the and I'm also predicting like about this like maybe Barbara, in the case of Barbara, maybe like about like Barbara, if Barbara has like through for another different might have gained any superpower like then under like it will only just like the relation is powerful or like in the case of Barbara. But in the case of like the bad versions are probably something like the thing her focusing find out of thing like telekinesis as well as like some sort of like a secondary unique power vessel that you need my with while all this might be the case like I'm considering still it might be 11 alone that might have like even to like the bottom that might have like the access to like the dark web. It's also like about the that I'm going to the correction by the So it's like a unit reimbursement right now as well that of control of network my talking might to like live to like about this like nana. Definitely putting that to sport controlling or possible controlling of that for my something for instance ending up that mess easily messing up that the relationship between like Mike and Eleven. Definitely that's the because like I'm totally that might totally be forced to like keep Mike from until that point might have always get things straight with that Eleven and they might have had that perfect understanding between each other like all that totally suddenly breaking up and getting messed up solely due to that offer like I'm putting my point on that on top of that the current like about like Nana but we might having to like justify that like not like justify that like my what might have like way more like than not to justify both great number of like might have like continue on saying risk and life repeatedly over and over again towards like 11 which like I'm looking at that point 11 would be totally seeing as if like might having lost interest in like 11 uh, especially that 11 project with understanding that taking it in such a manner and that resulting in that whole relationship, great relationship between like Mike and 11 ending up probably in a messed up kind of like a situation and like slowly like understand that half of them will be totally witnessing that 11 whom definitely until that point that 11 whom was like perfectly happy with her life of like having Mike with her life and everything that 11 was like so happy and jolly until then like slowly as each day passes after like focus that was for controlling of that over Mike like as each day passes slowly that joy that actual joy of that 11 that diminishing as like each day passes and that the more they pass to like 11 ending up getting more and more getting more and more frustrated and disturbed and trapped and crying that as like each day passes like because under the like probably having to like witness ending up having to like witness that like the day will be passing especially my good for them and even and at that point definitely I'm within Hopper that definitely there will be that strong feeling of guilt and regret but like I'm in that Hopper we totally letting his that ego get in the way and that unfortunately at that point that not accepting that not definitely not at all accepting that like a feeling of strong feeling of guilt and regret within him and that probably singing along the lines of that call for like the great of will for like 11 would be along the lines of the lack of probably seeing that and like definitely like still even with lack of definitely trying to like think along this line rather than like since they've seen like 11 in such really sad kind of like a situation. Like I'm would be trying more and more within pop up and it would be during this time that I'm just and definitely I'm looking at another fight as well. So I'm getting that pop up as well as 11 has just happening usually at that point. So then like 11 already being rotated and feeling rotated and disturbed with like such situations with Mike and all that like so like I'm from that pop up at that point would be once again remembering of like the days back during like the initial days when like of has about 11 to that house when that they would like totally they used to have like all that fight between them when like 11 was like totally uh that 11 had that like absolute frustration towards that copper back when like copper once again getting on that whole feeling that was that 11 once again turned into such a manner but like I'm looking that could be that and that would be also getting in like that him intensifying more within that copper with lack of also that side of feeling that it was left his control that had turned element into such a manner. And like there will be also the other side of lack of only from the feeling that like the storm for like the greater good of that element. But like I'm different that it will be during this times that during this whole messy situation between that the relationship between like of 11 and Mike and 11 and I'm looking that as like the relationship between like my candidate will be just getting messy, like I'm hoping that definitely there will be like prior meetings between that Hop and Mike where like I'm telling Mike will be talking venting out like Hopper for like destroying it all as well. And like I'm thinking that Hopper still at that point would be still really trying to like justify himself and just everything from Mike as well, like now. So like I'm looking for really good things for to be in such a mature situation that like I'm feeling like initially in a future like Hopper will be totally finding out about like Sarah, like the bad version of Sarah still being alive. If that's the scenario that, and at that point on meeting like the bad version of Sarah, at that point I'm thinking like finally Hopper would be like only letting go of all that all of that Hopper's like control and everything. And Hopper will finally be able to, and I'm going to get that point that Hopper will finally be able to like accept just that mistake and And definitely, I'm preferring like even at that point, like I'm thinking that while capture relationship between like my and 11 into totally getting extremely messy solely due to that sort of control. This is like very interesting scenario. Even at that point, I'm looking at that genuinity and like that absolute kind hearted and earnestness of like Mike and that absolute respect that like Mike would be having towards that pop up which like even though Mike not won't be like showing that on outside like until Mike be down to him that absolutely respect towards like for even if like even Mike was getting extremely angry towards that pop up those feel like pop up messing up stuff. Still I'm looking like oh Mike I'm the like 11 not finding out about like all being due to that pop up that like that relationship getting more and all that. So like I'm looking like eventually the different scenarios that I'm looking at for like it will be one like what will be finding out about the value that are the live and like pop up will be meeting like the value stuff. At that point like I'm looking like what will be finally feeling that absolute feeling of relief and comfort. And basically at that point Hopper will be finally letting go of that all of that control and I'm looking like Hopper finally accepting the select mistakes and then the lack of one of the by carefully apologize to that both 11 as well as Mike. And that way I can think that all the misunderstandings of that 11 to like Mike and that some of the development that way that Mike and 11 that should be correctly getting back so getting thrown back to the that from that from whenever like in the scenario that was in the like more to do also the cinema membership right now like go to laptop of control like this use my line like 11 core 11 being sad and that popper being totally happy like definitely prepping that eventually since I'm going to never I'm totally prepping that probably finally ending up meetings that the bad version of Clara that comes at that point is when I'm definitely hopper into realizing growth that definitely when the brain is the especially when it comes to like the hopper like actual dot of real world dot of Sarah like I'm saying before that before her elimination, like I was that she might have probably had like some sort of like desires or like something that which like Opera might have in a very similar manner to like how Opera might have with like control level, like Opera might have probably forced some sort of like a control over like actual sort of Saba as well. That even vice versa, well, which might have resulted in like Sarah probably and like I'm looking at that Opera's wife that might have been on the side of like Sarah of like wanting to like help her to that, but like and might have even back then might have been like proper control that might have caused like Sarah folks might have not had much time to live, might have been like tough situation so that yeah like that solely did that control of like I'm saying might have certain like Sarah usually ending up getting eliminated while being in an unhappy state might have been what might have happened. So like it might have been that final bit of that about Sarah which like might have ended up remaining like unfulfilled solely due to lack of control might have been what might have happened in like the past in that of line might be the case that we live in the truth and that phase might have definitely been a huge fact lack that resulting the rage which lack of quite at that point might have felt towards that of even to lack of control on Sarah might have been back then might have been a huge factor in that without the creating itself like getting the rewards of like that might have been what might have happened in like a certainly so like that deep regret since then might have been like as such an absolute pain that deep regret connecting like with Dog Sarah might have been remaining as like such an absolute pain even with like within like proper even thing like the things that make might be very much about which like even though after like seeing 11 and after like Hopper might have got that feeling of that even though Hopper actually didn't get Sarah back so 11 still like that feeling of like having adoption like this so Copper got that. Copper might have definitely got that through that 11. After like that Copper running into that even back then at 2011 to that house. Like I'm just bring that and even with like 11 that I'm just still I'm hoping that Copper might have after like seeing 11 like Copper might have totally absolutely forgot about that feeling of pain and regret. When coming to like Sarah's like definitely after like the control that Copper had imposed on like Sarah's like that might have been like the case that Leland Village. So like it would be that very same control, that control that property back then in that Sarah's like would be like the very same kind of control that pop up right now without realizing without that awareness, without realizing would be that enforcing into that 11's life and that way causing that service to that 11 right now in that way. It's definitely my always lack of might totally not being able to like realize what the friend not at all thinking that other even to like in this definitely five for the reimbursement. So, because of all the reasons, according to my reimbursement, the different to all the reasons after actually once that Mike can due to lack of first control, like once lack of native between that Mike and 11 so getting extremely like an kind of like that 11 so getting extremely disturbed and like sad and like always being angry and like angry at like Hopper and all that like I'm so then but when you during this time that like Hopper will be completely finding out like the bad version of Sarah being alive like at that point seeing like the bad version of and at that during that point like right before being like the bad version of Sarah like after Hopper's mind will be split with like Hopper feeling as if like him being the right for doing all that to that level and Mike's relationship solely for like the greater good and service side of Hopper will be only switched out himself to that whether what he did was like the right thing or not and like that feeling of like a certain kind of process. So like I'm thinking once he will be like meeting like the parallel was no probably finding out like the parallel was Sarah is like alive that at that point when I was like it instantly clicking for like pop up and like that instant realization that will be happening to pop up on seeing like Sarah's face itself as to like how he had like enforced like the similar kind of control onto that like actual real sort of real world Sarah like before she had got eliminated which had thought about like all that regret that had caused him that idea about which he had forgotten the same that time like Hopper realizing remembering that regret that pain of that regret only at that point and Hopper at that point that feeling has to be bad about like himself, about what he would have done by then to lack of like nothing of like the relationship and like the happiness and the happiness of like Mike and 11 and like Hopper through Sarah seeing Sarah's face like through that the recollection of all those memories and that regression like Hopper like that realization will be happening to the Hopper to the Hopper to that time Mike and 11 and that to probably apologize to confess and to like apologize to them. It's that feeling good scenario that I'm because of this kind of drink. So like the Liam still remember the presentation that like as well the issue with like the magnets in like the round open black with like magnets not acting like the way they should like I'm so it might have that you also taking remember the presentation that like it was totally due to like how like the face of humanoid monster like affects like the light sources like I'm looking for that uh, so different like the shadow monster might now totally out of that and end up of like a different type of like shadow monster might be the case that which might have like the power of like or opposite electricity but like might be having like the power of the side effect of like affecting magnetic solar might be the case especially when so like I'm just bring like a different type of that one. The most of the possibility of that it being maybe minion size like shadow monster like it's the very same kind of like shadow monster but like that of like the size of like the humanoid shape might be the case. Just like about the pyramid, but like they might have all been like spreading through that the underground, upside down, which might have been spreading throughout like the round circle, or like the top of like the mark here, but that absolute itself is definitely fine with the so like the more they will be spreading, like the more areas they will be spreading that in that area, like the magnet will be stopping to the magnet there in that location will be getting affected. And that might be how like it might have been recently once like the spreading of like, the bad world might have ended up racing towards like its home that like the magnet traffic like at its home had started to get affected. And right now like that spreading like the underground upside down might have reached that the location um of like those shot and this might be the reason for like it being only right now that basically those like magnet in at like those shop that are getting affected starting to get affected right now. Is definitely my experience. So like that spreading will be totally slowly increasing more and more. That is where definitely not like the kind of might be the case definitely might consider it. And about all of this like I'm looking for will be definitely aware of and friend will be absolutely seeing that absolute danger and absolute urgency kind of like a situation. And it will be especially due to that reason that it might just definitely be that the actual person will work for enough who might have brought all the other humans like parallel version of humans from like the parallel to that the real world to that seek help to that bring down that the government of which that but when you be saying something as like of like such as extreme urgency and like the not only the round of working but like the real world as well might end up like getting taken over by the battle world to be along the lines of like the extreme danger that might be steadily present in like the situation about which like perhaps you know might be like actually naturally might be aware just definitely my opinion. Very okay, so like, but you know, very much right now, like nothing right now showing up to that skills workplace at like right of like basically right. this is the point would be like the beginning of that scenario to be eventually leading to that Steve totally getting fired from the last job. I think like the job was like filling the scenario that I'm going to talk about. So definitely right now with that Dustin having revealed that like him totally having decided to like not even to say secrets to like Steve that like he has decided to like not even to tell to like neither Mike look up or like even Will or like Matthew. Like I'm the thing that we right now want like Dustin to tell Steve about like this whole like that message that he had heard through like the cerebro. Like the thing that we with like also with like Robin having revealed to the like keenly listening to like the conversation between like Steve and Dustin while pretending to be like totally this like interpreting that it would definitely be due to like a Robin definitely be like secretly totally would have that massive crush on Steve, especially with my different. So definitely I'm just trying like a scenario to be like one like Dustin would be really about with like secret message like and like it being like only to feel that to Steve like I'm trying like Steve's first reaction and thought is nothing but to Steve totally not believing the it's like the scenario where Steve initially would be not believing that what like the film we're trying to like convince Steve that like, it's like some sort of like film Steve and all that. While definitely in that scenario that I was in. So like get like I'm going at that point, like don't seriously purpose them because like at that point like nothing for the student of will be feeling frustrated like and will be feeling kind of that frustrated with like the behavior of like Mike and Robert like of just leaving the thing and not watch on any interest at like the things that person was saying and all that definitely my frame so definitely still right now like when you get up like only oh this definitely my things like solve this like mystery which like person will be doing about like this like code message code and everything that we have through like cerebro. So definitely my so definitely I'm the next stage initially not at all believe the film, but like I'm doing definitely straight away being half with step totally out of the innocence desperation to have someone to like share and to like go on this like investigation but that's all this like mystery like I'm doing nothing being afraid and that way like nothing being 40% and like nothing totally managing eventually managing to like convince like to be totally one person and I'm doing like that way. White customer will be like being straight away would the right answer would be between person and that would be managing like convince Steve and to get Steve to like go on like to totally like leave from work like skip work and this week like composing that way to work and I'm straight away at that point itself like while Robin would be like genuinely concerned for like Steve feeling all the things that like Dustin would be saying and all that that it might have that in like the like only losing his job and all that. And on the lines of like the possibility that player Robin will be easily so like Robin will be straight away telling Steve that basically that song he listens to that Dustin that way. He will be along the lines like Robin will be telling like Steve and along the lines of like Dustin slowly making those up. But like I'm considering that number maybe even more rhetoric Steve so that's which will be resulting in that maybe Steve told me at that point deciding to like go along with like Dustin's like for investigation and Steve at that point might be what like it would be like a person the involvement of Robin into that private conversation between like Steve and the thing which might have certain like Steve straight away deciding to like probably to believe that to see that as like about what like the thing we think about like the message which is message and all that like in scenario and that here at that point and while the right now until 2008 they would be like leaving from his like job and like Steve when leaving him straight away telling Robin to like only cover for Steve and only to that way only to like to like the boss about like Steve like happens there at like the work week. It's like the scenario that I'm bring in. Definitely I'm going to bring that Robin like that definitely I'm going like the source like that source motivation for that Robin every day for her to like show up to this like job which like she will like thoroughly be disliking deep down with definitely mentioning but like her sole motivation would be like for like keep working at that job would be solely Steve and like track that like Steve's for because most like your they don't have that much of corruption. It's definitely another magical. But like Steve leaving like I'm doing like so would be only agree to and yet like I'm doing that totally showing that absolute empathy towards like Steve and like her actually like doing her absolute best to like take out what Steve in front of like the box and everything. So like I'm doing still like I'm doing solely to like custom and this like mystery message and everything like I'm doing like and as like Steve and the thing will be going on their private investigation to like find out the truth behind the message. And I'm looking that this very united will like I'm doing once again like Steve as well as the going up to like that very same mountain top and using that sort of like I'm looking that production. I'm going to bring that that very night as well, maybe let them through that cerebral that Dustin and Steve like finding out like another secret messages, like getting another secret message, like one possible scenario that I'm doing, or like the other possible scenario that I'm doing for like this very night, like even though Dustin will be probably has really confident that like this might has been like on top of that mountain, like through the cerebral area, like get more messages like everything like that very night, like there being as well no messages and Steve starting that suspect Dustin. But like once again, like and maybe Steve will come back to like the job, but like the next day as well, Dustin will be showing up to that Steve's workplace and like only once again forcing and managing to like force Steve to like get Steve out of like the job to that once again go on like the investigation and definitely assuring Steve that like that might definitely one of like the amount of top that there definitely would be another message and if there's no message then Steve can totally send back would be along the lines like nothing would be an issue and maybe that might as well like they'll not be able to like get any message through like server and as like Steve would be about to leave uh, at that point that and like the school bit desperately trying to like have Steve stay for like a little bit more but like Steve at that point would be getting like only disappointed and like will be kind of getting frustrated so like at that point that he will be about to leave like at that point like the message once again happening and then hearing like a message like this sorry like the scenario that so like at that time, like I'm thinking that for Robin would be doing some absolute best to like make out of cakes. And if you're right now with like the situation with like Nancy as well as Johnson as well, seeing like them totally with all the light like totally making out of their job to like do their own investigation as well. There's like Nancy totally feeling all that suspicion like and I'm definitely putting like the two sets of like investigations happening in parallel for like Nancy as well as like Jonathan as well as like Steve and that's what I'm looking for happening. This will be eventually resulting in like for Steve as well as like Nancy as well as Jonathan like eventually ending up getting fired from their job is like the scenario that happened. So that like at that point they will be getting that all the they will be having like all the time in like the world for like for them to like totally and fully solely focus on like the investigation to like find out like the whole behind all the mysteries like within our head about all that. And at that point, once like Steve will be getting fired by like the boss, like at that point the competitor like Steve would be like only feeling bad and like Steve would be leaving and at that point I'm without created it at all like Robin would be totally without Steve like I'm Robin at that point would be having absolutely zero the staff at all to like stay at that job that I think of that like I'm doing after like the boss would be firing Steve like I'm like uh even when like the boss finding out that Robin was like dying that in that time that is like the scenario that was get like the boss probably forgiven for Robin but like due to like that in that time Robin having to work from the job and then yet like the boss finds Steve but like at that point like I'm due to my victory which I'm looking that Steve might have been like the only reason for like Robin even staying at that job so like once like Steve will be getting fired like like Robin like the government level like Steve will be doing that more like I'm looking that Robin straight away like that given her recognition to like the boss and that Robert really job that is like an after that I'm looking and like then like I'm looking from that one on and definitely I'm very still thinking to my future I'm looking that like unlike Steve's case that got Steve from like a can be that Robin's case won't be so definitely considering Robin might more actually be from like a very big family definitely might consider everything yet like I'm certain Robin would be extremely bored and smart woman and like she would be having that absolute confidence that like she would probably be like find another job not only for her but also for Steve. It's definitely necessary ambition. So like definitely for like that time being like I'm like Robin deciding to like Robin thought at that point would be perfect feeling that it will definitely will probably get Steve to like make Steve understand that like basically that he's trying to like trick Steve would be along the line in a firm manner like Robin would be today that basically and I'm hoping that Robin trying to like convince Steve that basically that like Steve like that happens like totally trying to like trick Steve and basically if Steve keeps going on which is like Steve might lose his job and all this like Robin might out want different like scenario being like this where like Robin is wanting Steve might time but like Steve paying no heed to like Robin's work like what and like still going on with like the spin for like bring this relation and everything and that resulting in like Robin's like wanting getting up becoming a reality like Steve like the scenario that I'm and that but I'm looking like even though Robin will be like I want the member to be in relation Bowling will be extremely feeling extremely enraged towards like things like the scenario that has different. So like definitely Robin at that point would have probably fixed enough mind like definitely to ensure that like this like whole tricking of like subject of like Steve and destroying of like Steve's life totally expose that like you and convince you that that absolute sort in the alone so that absolute genuine proof in the point of view towards like you that I'm Robin setting up and like deciding to like talk and follow that skill and the skills like the scenario that I'm looking for. That way like I'm doing like essentially feel or the like one of them I'm looking like usually finding out like Robin stock in the like scenario that I'm looking for. And at that point, I'm just like a huge fight happening where like Robin will be totally bending out the race towards like the fit, and Steve will be bending out that the range of that Robin totally that's being disrespectful and being a road towards like the things like this and after. And it will be in such and I'm wondering like the reason would be like Robin certainly not about believing something at all. While Steve on the other hand will be like even though he will be having like the vision towards like what the is like the things to say or not like because Steve's like at this friendship that he between his like he will be only inclining more towards like the range of like the scenario better. So like once the sport fight and the happening between that in like a rocking street and Dustin would be when I'm looking like suddenly some sort of like an event happening where like like there are actually that actual evidence happening of like some sort of that actually getting some sort of like an evidence for like the message that Dustin had heard like the whole episode ago actually they're being proven it like that like proof of the innocent like the scenario that I was like and that's what we're talking about. It's like the scenario that I was like rather than that going getting convinced it's like scenario that I'm looking at. From that point on I'm looking without my state like I'm looking like it being like a situation where like at that point where I'm looking like Steve as well as like um Steve as well as like Robin won't be having a job at that point and that the same situation with like will be that for like the situation of like man people that are jumping at the same also setting up their investigating that as well engineering up like both of them like Johnson as well as Nancy goes in their job and like eventually I'm looking for their investigations ending up colliding with pieces of like them ending up running into each other at some point in their PFP with that scenario that I'm looking at. And that way like I'm looking like the whole joint investigation happening. It's like the and then forming a total group and like the joint such a joint investigation happening from that point on is like with the scenario that I'm looking over like I'm not looking at. So like the name of the interesting right now, I feel like how exactly the of my dog or matching back, give not matching dumping represent that 5 times like about like that's the point my dog in like all sorts of like life and career that like both of my dog is definitely on my mount for my things definitely one career below like definitely I'm right now like the advice like that the studio right now giving my news that the right now telling Mike to not be in despair of that poor Mike being in despair of that like one to like 11 and that's the thing like because right now giving all the like Luther's version of advices of Black Baby right now telling Mike that is to in order to like cover up that single light of like Mike instead of like preparing for like Mike to like cover up that light of that even more light would be along the lines of the different like for Mike being given advices by Luther's version of advice to like the scenario that I to bring and that way like I'm looking right now what like writing would do to that I'm looking like to create like a fake false scenario where like to make it seem as if like and in front of like what Lucas might have done in like the past like kept maxing back 5 times that like Lucas by mental might have been Lucas might have created like fake and false scenarios while Lucas might have stopped and spied on like Maxine and whenever Maxine was like went outside like this Lucas might have simply said uh, women to like totally create like fake scenario where like they would be like totally pretending to that be that totally falling for like Lucas and wanting as that they are falling in love with like Lucas and basically so they want to be in that relationship. The others are trying to get Lucas to be in that relationship with them that Lucas might have staged such a fake and false scenario while ensuring that but in a prepared manner while initially spying on Maxine that right Maxine is stepping out and basically like staging this in such a way as to that way to make it seem for like Maxine as if like because doesn't even know that Maxine is there and basically it's like something that's like naturally happening. To be around the lines of and like such as change thought and take acting that you might have tricked Maxine into making like formatting possibly feel like insecure of itself and probably of like lovers might have it what like lovers like or like about the week might have so like in like the person from like Maxine's point of view like even though Maxine might show it like we don't they don't Maxine maybe having that exchange insecurity with himself of like the positive like losing certainly my career like from my point of view like through that one is like difficult fake acting by because like it might have been what like Lucas might have done like nothing might be having like the current image of like Lucas that nothing I would be that of that Lucas being that for absolute guy that like all the girls like and basically and want to make girls movie along the lines like I'm feeling like matrimony has that insecurity which like little through such the fake acting might have created definitely within like my thing definitely my choose way definitely my favorite. So like this I'm going to bring I'm going to be like the advice that I'm going to bring like Lucas to right now. Just something like advice in my so like I'm going to bring that should be what like Lucas right now is telling Mike to like for his fake such a scenario in front of that 11 and basically that way to not get 11 so feeling insecure and possessive of Mike so that like basically at that point that 11 whom like Mike Maxine whom that when that like the time Maxine had some because like my job being so deficient of mind to like totally probably go in no contact with like because until like Lucas responds back and Lucas goes up to Maxine and the story like man that way same Maxine like seeing that what she that way same Maxine by through like Lucas probably that getting tricked into thinking that is me like other girls were like fighting for like to make Lucas feel like basically that way that same such situation might have and like Maxine getting so thinly possible to make the point of that Maxine herself like storming her way into that raging at almost worse than basically raging at Lucas as well and like forcefully taking Lucas back. I think doing that the relationship might have been what might have happened like the so like Lucas totally while coping that such a scenario that and Mike being able to like pull off like such a scenario in the lines like Lucas will be the like or continuing it like the scenario that and Mike will be only feeling off about all this like all this and listen to like but right the look might be surrounded so get down stuff you know that way I'm different right now Lucas right now so they advise Mike that is to that in the case of Mike like the task would be a bit harder because like the first task the task would be to like ensure to like get in a out of like the home like proper. So that basically to make that happen like to ensure of like license to frustrate Maxine into that taking 11 out into that taking 11 out to have 11 go out for like Maxine to have that type of like basically where like and that way so that like when section 11 is spinning like outside for so that like at that point that they will be that Lucas and Mike be able to that philosophy that you got for that big acting strategy to be along the lines of that and the advice Mike and like building up strategies that you have but like I'm like really that things for me that very hard on what Mike was definitely because strategy for like that very hard for Mike was like unlike because like the play 11 bit of unlike 11 especially right now to make the person like learn what I totally like so essentially they found that that maxing to the point that I'm bring that to the fundamental assumption definitely threatening for like the like the advice like then trying to like pull off uh, such a fake acting but like I'm seeing that way seeing like another girl trying to like win my over like I'm that hurting in that uh 11 and 11 like talking is like way feeling as like might have like 11 to do exactly just that with that something and that would be creating like a totally different kind of like an outcome and totally contrary to that what makes us and my case is only expecting that and that 11 without talking mature like the point of like basically 11 deciding to like basically to seriously hold no contact with like my and in that currently remove my contact like for to the along the lines and at that point on witnessing that like another girl transacted my power and not 11 that big thing at that point like 11 without saying at that point will be like tearing up and crying and I'm also putting like get like 11 will be also enraged and like get like I'm also like 11 unlike like 11 okay like the past and we had the same similar kind of like misunderstanding connecting to that and I think and Mike were like 11 had like we certainly use a superpower to like back 19 and I think if like the person like 11 would have like went far beyond that so like the point that like 11 even though 11 would be sad like really tearing up to that point one thing the girls trying to like in my power like I'm like still without even saying a word that would be straight away heading back to that the house that pop up. And basically they are like I'm looking like event so that staying and maybe event for the straight away starting to like permanently cut off that mic like that in the scenario that and at that point like I'm looking like everyone will be taking out all that certification and frustration towards like pop up that you will definitely pop up into the like so for like a different that form of things that will be at that point still be like deal with all that race of like relevant at that point created by things that the scenario that I'm looking at. And then that time like I'm looking at Mike would be the training trying to like meet 11 but like I'm looking at 11 definitely telling Hopper that like she doesn't at all want to meet Mike and doesn't want that Mike to even show up to that house to get on the line somebody like even we would telling like a series that impression and we would telling Hopper shouting out about another and that as well as literally Hopper at that point as well will be feeling that as feeling of that starting to feel that as the feeling of like so definitely the message to everything. Because of that feeling that Hopper has like Freud like Hopper's control has like destroyed like the relationship will be definitely wrongly felt within how certain way extent to get like I'm to lack of that point only listening to like 11 and like telling my to like me is also like scenario that I will that's only like one thousand that I'm doing the possible that I'm preparing it for like since I got into my preparation I'm so preparing this exactly to be like slightly that I'm looking like because will be advising my and so to bring that slightly into the resulting in like not only 11 doing that like my and basically like to like 11 because like might have lost interest in like 11 but like also on the maybe for like once like 11 will be like carefully after like seeing my another trying to win my call like basically once like 11 will be probably carefully return back home like maybe at that point like even Hopper things getting serious to the point of like maybe Hopper as well probably believing 11 while 11 I'm just like they are seeing that interaction between like Hopper and 11 like 11 will be wending out towards that of that of that Mike having lost in the spring and that having seen Mike was like another so basically 11 that wending out carefully towards the man of towards like Hopper and maybe Hopper like probably actually believing that like Mike has like probably lost interest like basically would be also like the one that was the Burma thing. So that way Hopper has been totally believing that and that's totally ending up that with that one that Mike will be going up to like Hopper's house like to talk to 11 like at that point that Hopper was like an absolutely enraged and furious man of like telling Mike to that to never show to to his home ever again. It's also like about that way that Mike totally getting into that such an absolute mess of like kind of like a situation is also all day to like Hopper's control of like Mike. This that even scenario that about the which I mean it's like I'm would be eventually gradually that should be getting solved would definitely might be there. About like the issues with like the parallel worlds like running through like the round points and all this like the jump is something that we will be having right now. We'll be getting that procedures and we getting lots and like more changes will be happening like and that is maybe like might getting into trouble and like at that point maybe at that point like relevant that only setting aside everything and basically showing up continuing to like save Mike and that was different like at that whole intense situation where like 11 will be that save Mike and I'm also going at that point like I'm also going that active seed stock between that Mike and 11 only happening to where like Mike will be something about that everything and maybe Lucas as well will be something at that point that Lucas as well at that point telling sorry to that 11 and that 11 only maybe at that point maybe Hopper as well will be open there. It's also like that way that while Lucas would become the thing and that Hopper will be that way totally finding out like that like the ripple effect of that this like of its control of that might what Patrick has done to that whole village that it was that which he had destroyed and must have like the relationship between that 11 and Mike will get on the lines like maybe at that time realizing I'm doing that to get that Hopper as well at that point touching to that Mike and 11 um, and maybe through Hopper alone at that point that 11 certainly finding out because that definitely I'm looking only through my study learning to finding out that it will get all the confession of that Hopper that 11 will be finding out about like why my have started like to that eventually of the like the finale that I'm I guess like but even person right now for like Billy right now showing up to like the swimming pool area right now like I'm think that definitely won't be like the actual Billy but like the because like the parallel version of Billy is definitely like very amazing. So right now the Black Mike is the right now starting like go up to Billy like I'm looking at me right now I'm looking at getting like the biggest shock with like a little bit totally feeling it's strange because like I'm thinking that Michael the mentioned that like it won't be like the actual Billy but like the parallel version of Billy. The parallel version of Billy would be having like absolutely would be showing absolutely no sense at all towards like my like the fanatic that I'm better over the so like my different impressions that like definitely I'm still thinking of my different impressions that it might not definitely bring definitely be that run up along the real world run up along with that him bringing that the parallel version of Java, as well as like parallel version of Billy, as well as like a bunch of other, as well as Barbara, the real world Barbara, as well as there will be bunch of others from like the parallel world, as well as maybe a bunch of like the remain, a bunch of like new scientists of like or not as well, like on the back then, by heading off the like the parallel world, which might have the build runners ways, which might have done it like the might have taken like with him like the surviving one scientist that like well will be close like silhouettes of like close to a number of people might have been on the definitely remember the so like at that point it's looking that definitely that this like parallel version of that really might have definitely uh have had like super powerful like technical powers to like one of the enemies might have been like the use of the demon. So like using that superpowers like I'm looking like the parallel version of Billy might have easily uh, stop that actually from getting attack and putting that the run up and the select team might have taken like the actual belief away with him. But like I'm that might have that set up some sort of like a secret base even in like the town of Hawkins in like the real world aspect is definitely one different. Run up right now going up to like the real world and still speaking to my ambition might be definitely doing that to expand and increase the like whole army of like fighters warriors like superpowers to fight and bring down like Saddam might be the leader. So, like that way recruit more people from the real world who are already extremely strong and to give like the telekinesis powers as well to like those individuals as well and that way to create a huge army and like fight out and break down like that using all the superpowers in the like lucky another man. So like not to succeed in this goal like a leader right now might have set up like a secret base somewhere in like the town of so definitely not dimension where like it will be there the actual that the actual real world will believe might be in like a trap kind of like situation in that base in like the real world in like the town of one of might be like the case where like runner should be like planning on like something really like starting to like experiment on like the actual belief to have like the actual belief as well to gain like that for superpower like I think so might be like the currency accuracy of the situation might be very much as my impression for like for Brenner at that point there was also that high priority to like avoid attracting any attention from like the public in the real world. So definitely it might be with that intent that like I'm not going that might have only interrogated Billy upon like oppression Billy that the real world Billy might have interrogated Billy and might have put also for so, like abandoning the Billy into that trap kind of like situation and might have treated us and like might have only also interrogated him into like basically make him reveal all the details about like Billy. And basically that way that Liam like the bad version of Billy and that way Brenda might have got like the information that where Billy works and that basically that for swimming pool that kind of like an area. So like that way like I'm might have avoid that creating any suspicion or like any missing news in like the public like Liam that might just straight away assign like the bad version of Billy with like the dark to like complete to that pretends to be like the authenticity and go to work basically to maintain that strength while one of like instruments one of continuous like experiment in like celebrating that the real world to create like harmony of that so that eventually might be what might have happened and like definitely might have been the okay so like the Indian member I'm looking right now and for like Lydia right now so they're getting the same angry but like Mike's not up care like I'm like actually of the reason might have been you to that have mentioning that family definitely not the emotion because like definitely I'm still thinking about the emotion that like that won't be like the actual belief but like it will totally be like a bad version of belief who might have totally lost who might have been living in like the bad world and basically thinking that this like whole spreading of like the monsters in like the bad world like he might have totally lost like precious family and like I'm like in like the bad version of Billy's like family like bad world I'm looking like it might have not just been Maxine, but like Billy's that mother, actual mother might have been, and I feel like the bad word, and like Billy's father as well might have been like bad version of Billy's that father might have been totally contrary to like the Billy's the actual Billy's like father in like the real world, like the bad version of Billy's father might have been like an absolute like loving father who might have been also like extremely to clinic that need mitochondrial emission. So like he might have lost all of that due to like these monsters that he mitochondrial emission and so he might have also like might have gone through such a traumatic situation where like he might have even witnessed losing all of them due to like monsters. It also might have been like might be the reason for like right now as like Mike's mother Karen like is here right now mentioned like the word family. It might have been that might have that topic triggered that what will to that extreme. Who might be like Billy from like a Albert to that extreme to left him. At that point, like at the mention of like the word family, like him remembering that from traumatic event, so like he had lost his left hand, like Albert might have been what might have happened to the medical brain, but not for lack of Albert just really knowing that the name can like it might have been through that interrogation of like the actual real world to be by those like all this information might have totally been got out definitely might have been able to. Obviously, like definitely understanding in another that like the movie that has right now showed this interest towards like cat as well as like things like and like the swimming pool location that is being affected by sunlight would definitely not be at all due to that the spreading of like the particles of like the shadow of your throat that is body or anything like it might have been solely due to that this belief being that definitely the battle version of Billy and in like the battle version of that using no sunlight at all. And that alone will be like so reason for like the day right now struggling and being affected by sunlight right now. Especially my brain. Yet like I'm looking that in a few days like I'm looking that this maybe same bad version of Billy will be getting totally used to like the sunlight. Unlike in like wind case like where like wind was that totally reduced to like only the to like stay indoors and due to like the spreading of like the shadow of the wind like you can win like I'm that definitely won't be the case at all with like Billy right now because like Billy would be only like the fan version of Billy. Okay, so like definitely my memory I'm riches right now as for like at like the old woman the sports house like a rat looking for like that definitely would be like the work of like the shadow monsters to that complete like the place in which like the underground wines of like the upside down like since like wines are like since like the upside down spreading has like way of like spreading through this like plant like wines like so that way to like toughen up and increase like the space of like the spreading of like that underground wine all throughout like the town housing indefinitely. So reason for like all this rat would be in the control of the shadow monster will be eating up on the fertilizers because like then to like transport that way to for the shadow monster will be controlling all that rat by storing all that fertilizer onto their body and then bringing controlling and bring all those rats towards like the underground location where like all those like points of like that underground upside down would be spreading and there to like the and like the rat all those rats would be like throwing up like the fertilizers onto like the vines and usually that way so like the fertilizers like the vines that will be like spreading slowly spreading through like the underground, multiple underground, upside down, in like the town of Hawkins will be increasing its speed of zero times spreading. Definitely my preference. And for all this to be possible, definitely I'm looking for the routine. I'm still thinking about that like within like the past 1 year, like definitely multiple stealthy in like stealthy location, underground location, all across like the town so it's like multiple that it might have been that created from like the bad word, like the red word through Tali's like power, where like Tally might have definitely been under like the control might have been taken under like control by the shadow monster in like the past year. Definitely and the revolution that is sitting on and that even happening through that scientist from that lab in like Russia that basically that's affecting Gary and basically ending up that using Gary to like open up the gates and while they were they might have thrown like through that gate from Russia that definitely them having gotten affected by one of like the at that point like Gary about having got affected from there in like the backward by one of like the faces model who might have been under like the control of like the shadow motor and the shadow motor might have sent like multiple faces models under its control in like the past year that after like even having closed the gate like the shadow motor might have sent multiple faces models all across like the bad one expecting like the possibility of that there being multiple gates existing uh, that will be connecting like a parallel and real and not just the single gate that has been closed by 11 will be along the lines, which are amongst our made of teams is a possibility. And that way, like I'm feeling like that way, like that one of like the big ones under like the control of the shadow motor might have been what like might have probably ran into that carry and that the forces that from that lab and they believe that scientists as they might have been exploring the parallel and that Gary might have used the sort of power against like those trick monsters and like at that point like the shadow must have can probably see what like the thing it controls sees and feels like and the shadow must might have that way remotely might have straight away been able to like feel that's there it's like I don't know individual exactly like in a way you can like powers to like open up the gate looks like right now in like the background that way like that might have been like a great number of like stating models that and they are during that point and that those cases not under control might have eliminated that those military forces and that then might have totally affected Cali, might have been what might have happened, and that might have taken control of it. That way, the shadow method might have taken control of Cali, and like using Cali, like the shadow method might have been this, and that time might have created like multiple that using Cali protocol, like that sentence of like the shadow method might have by now or the previous year or the previous year might have created multiple stealthy underground gate all across the town of Hawkins. Through which like wine through the and through each of those gates like multiple gates like wine which is like fighting underground upside down wines will be fighting all throughout like the would be starting would have spread to a certain extent through like the town of Hawkins that has this stealth and like all these fertilizers like would be like rats eating all these fertilizers to be like in the shadow of the while controlling the rats like doing that whole transportation of like fertilizers and to have like the fertilizers that we use the fertilizers to like increase like the pace of like the zero of like the wines underground upside down wines to have like the wines like that should be able to like as quickly as possible be like spread all throughout like the town of Hawkins. It's definitely this will be what like the Shalom might have attempted or and done or past year. It's definitely my personal reaction. And I'm still in the moment that like even the black rats having been revealed the dust particles of like the Shalom like having been revealed to like try to like take over the rats, but like the rats having exploded like and then still I'm still in the moment that like it will be definitely and with like almost great number of labs from that mountain like forming as like forming a group and like passing towards like the go along like so then that we have to take the method will be like a human inaudible like we can see that like the particle of the shadow must will be only sending through like very attract and you have to that go around and from there like the shadow must even though like the majority of those rats that are shown up there might have been still there might have been that minority who might of rats that might have been tough and strong, physically and mentally strong that like might have been able to handle like the control of that is the shadow running of like the shadow of the man that way. The shadow monster might have been always able to like control like the minority and like the fact that like the shadow monster will be lured towards it through like the frequencies from like the real world. Often like what might have happened that way like the channel by now might have through adding up like the minority or like the balls of like the past year like channel by now might have created like a huge army of rats that limit the players. So that those rats will be helping out like the channel with like even digging of like the underground upside down as well as like with like even providing fertilizers for like the wines of like the underground upside down to like spread at like an even great state. Like would be what would be happening right now is definitely my victory. Okay, so like definitely my victory position right now that's for like all women this fall having for one of like the rat like spring definitely right now the spring once you're revealing that rat from like the case like at that point the permit and straight away like also straight away believing like the words of like the fall and straight away assuming that like that rat has like rabies by the strange way is usually acting but like I'm doing that in the case of Nancy I'm considering Nancy will be totally feeling a serious feeling of kind of like a feeling about that rat like and a feel kind of like a feel kind of like a feeling towards that rat like as if like something was like only off as if like not just rabies along in there and then Nancy will get that feeling it's just at that point into feeling so like I'm looking at Nancy at that point but like while the rat would be like in an extremely danger and the manner would be like in a scary manner would be around in like that case trying to like trying to get a friend trying to get out like get a case while attacking repeatedly in a non-stop manner would be attacking that case like at that point I'm Nancy slowly walking up towards like the curtain and like Nancy totally moving like the curtain and like having like sunlight fall onto like the case the sunlight fall onto like the case it's like the scenario that this is one scenario that I'm definitely having for like Nancy to do at that point there's like an anti-subscription. And at that point, I'm spending the moment like the light will be falling on to the right that right in that the case like I'm in scenario to be like that right super and that's that right ending up straight away getting eliminated or like I'm spending like that right at that point. Definitely I'm spending that right at that point at the moment the sunlight will be falling onto that right, especially due to like the spreading of the shadow of the thing of like within that right. Will definitely be the case. So the moment the sunlight will be falling onto that right in like the case like the flipping that right screaming that was like screaming in pain at that point. It's like the scenario that I was and like that was like instantly shocking like Nancy and Jonathan because like really that's very same kind of like a scream same kind of like a body language and like a scream of like going through pain as exactly how Will had went through back when like a year back while like they were trying to like close the case to like the battlewood and his knee to increasing like the temperature while they were trying to like attempt to like get like the shadow amount of spreading and process out of that will like basically at that point that exact stream of that pain and body language will transact to be like the similar kind of like body language considering at that point like and theory like shockingly witnessing on that track. It's like the rat in the case is like the scenario that I'm doing. And then I'm thinking that maybe of like walking up like that rat instantly getting eliminated for like that rat like screaming in pain like that rat returning back to that it's like normal kind of like a rat because that's like the scenario that I'm doing. And at that point of when I'm saying like that would be the moment that moment of absolute shock of basically Nancy and Jonathan being like the first to like realize that like the fight against like that it's not over like the fight against like the shadow of the it's still not over and basically like like they all had basically straight away assume that they had defeated like the shadow monster like they had outsmarted like the shadow monster in that time it was like the shadow monster that had like the upper hand and was like outsmarting them this entire time or like the past year would be along the lines of like that actually talking realizing this was like that's at that point have this like scenario that I'm doing. And that's why I'm considering definitely Nancy and Jordan will be feeling that as urgency to like get this information first to like cover certainly myself to them. And my reactions for like at that point like once like Nancy and Jordan I'm considering that these talking to the level getting this like crucial information to like offer like at that point I'm like offer will be totally desperate to like that's one of the get this like crucial information to like Owen. So like offer will be totally confused as to like because like Opera is only thing that like Owens might be when I'm fully aware of all this happening. So that's why Owens is like keeping all this like kept all this secret from Opera. In the long lines of like in the confusion of Opera. So like Opera at that point spotting Owens and basically revealing all this to like Owens and I'm just like at that point Owens has been being totally talked to like just in that time like I'm just like the shadow most of might have but also pick up here like the shadow most of might have learned from its mistake of like its failure and with like 11 close in the gates, like and the channel of might have quickly might have been I do that quickly learn of that it might have quickly just on the state of like basically underestimating like the importance of stealth that and like for the past 1 year like the channel of might have made all of its like movements with such absolute and extreme stealthy manner like it might have carried out and spreading of like the current word sort of like underground, upside down in like the town or something. So the past year that kind of things that might have been executed by like the uh, shadow monster with such absolute precision that like Emily Payne not even Owen or like the genius like scientist that like Owen like Sanatri Laboratories might be even aware of like all this happening of like of like the fight against like shadow monster still not over like like not even being aware of that and I'm bring that personality to be being only once like through like once like Popper will be saying that like it is only at that point that's like even always end up on the science and like kind of feel about it, finding out about it. So the really necessary. So like I'm sort of made like this time like the shadow monster might have moved in like a totally different magical manner where like shadow monster oh that was with the past year in its like fight back against like Hawkins like I'm considering that shadow monster might have prioritized stealth to the extreme and more focused on extreme stealthy manner but like it might have ensured to like avoid like the energy laboratory, like even by spreading across like topics, like it might have been sure to like create like most likely using carry by taking control of carry to like to then create like this stealthy underground gate like in Hawkins like far away from like the Hawkins lab and the such as with stealth to carry out like the spreading of technology upside down uh, so that like maybe so that like the final place for like spreading to reach would be like the energy level. So like the spreading right now would be would have began from like the farther ends of like the town of province from that where the location where like the energy level will be and from there it will be like slowly spreading more and more into like the town of province. It might be what would be happening right now. So like that way, like, like one scientist, like science streams in that time, might be totally unaware of all this happening by that on moments of exam. So that the public exam and the good materials. So the clean experience right now and for like on huge protest against like the mayor client of like against like and definitely the reason for that protest like might have been due to like the thick and sound outages that might have been repeatedly happening across like the majority of like the entire past year and basically with like multiple like appliances and like devices and all of this like electronic devices and appliances, all these things like might have ended up like getting destroyed like the or and like the public losing a lot of money buying repeatedly buying like appliances one appliance like one certain set of like appliance breaks down and gets destroyed. Like I'm assuming they might have all came to like the public might have came to the conclusion that like it might have been all due to like the frequent repeated power outages that was like destroying the appliances like the along the line. But in that way, like the public might have suffered a lot of like loss in like job money and all that. So like I'm doing even after like an entire year, like basically that like the power outage is still happening and not getting fixed. Like even if like the recent power outages from like the mall that like Mike and was watching like the movie, but they get like that power outage of just running on some of like the power outage like basically just might feel like slowly just also could be the reason for like multiple businesses opening up in like, the town of Hawkins and like getting shut down as well straight away. And basically look like shops having like customers at all like shops being in a desert kind of thing. All this would be like connected to the event and all will be happening to you like this underground upside down like spreading up in the underground upside down and that way like the face monsters like as the face monsters like spreading through steadily spreading through according to like the command of like the shadow monster and like all this like this multiple hubs as well by now might have created underground hubs as well might have been fully created and that way like multiple faces monsters might have been like moving through basically moved through according to like the auras of like the shadow monster through like this underground upside down passageway throughout like the round of talking and this will be the reason for like this like multiple power pages to like these monsters like affecting like the electric source of like the town electric source and appliance across like the town of Hawkins. As well as that I'm still in the map mission with like right now with like magnet out has been getting being revealed to be getting affected. And that means to the magnet represent as well like the reason for like the magnet getting affected like that will be due to like a no different type of like monster you to be like a minion version of like the shadow monster which might either exist already at some locations within like the battle world. Or like since like such a, after like the shadow monster like fail with like everyone closing the gate at that point like maybe the shadow monster might have summoned all this like minions shadow monster. It might have the side effect of causing like it to like affect not electricity but like magnet might be the case. Or like the shadow monster itself might have like the power to like create like its own minion version of like shadow monster. Maybe and that monster definitely might be the reason for like magnet getting affected. So like electricity as well as like magnet getting affected on like the crown of Hawkins. That way like this double effect side effect of like these monsters might have resulted in like appliances getting destroyed at like an extremely fast all sorts of gadgets, electrical gadgets and appliances getting destroyed repeatedly and like might have resulted in like a lot of complaints from like the public to lack of these fix like where like they would always think that it's all like support of like the power of data and that they would be they would have sent much complaints to that client like the mayor uh, to fix the situation and basically this entire time like that client might be like a genuine person who might have lack of genuinely putting all the like effort into that trying to fix it but like he still might have regardless of how many times he will be like fixing like the power of the situation like the situation would be like once again like the same situation happening was like once again the power base happens. So like he himself would be like suddenly getting more and more confused as to like how to fix the situation about which like about these things like the public would be given aware of and like the public might have straight away assume of like the round public might straight away assume that it will contribute to the mayor clients like corruption will be along the lines like like the public might have assumed and this might be the reason for like maybe by now like the person like public finally getting fed up to the point of like creating all this like huge protest outside like the mayor's place mayor client's place might have been what might have happened with the week might have been